The cardboard box slipped from Olivia Harper's trembling hands and burst open on the sidewalk, scattering her nursing badge, a faded stethoscope, and a framed photo of her late mother across the cracked pavement of Cedar Grove, Ohio. Just 10 minutes earlier, she had been walking out of St. Matthew's Regional Hospital with her head held high. Now she was walking home fired, humiliated, and numb, her career shattered by a single decision that others called insubordination, but she knew was compassion. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and standing up for what's right even when it costs everything, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that integrity still matters. Olivia had worked at St. Matthew's for 6 years. She wasn't flashy, she wasn't loud, and she certainly wasn't political. She was the nurse who stayed late to hold a frightened patient's hand. The nurse who memorized medication schedules without checking charts twice. The nurse who brought homemade muffins for night shift security. She lived in a small rented duplex on the edge of town and sent part of every paycheck to her younger brother, Caleb, who was finishing community college in Toledo. The incident that ended her career happened during a chaotic morning shift in the emergency department. A man in his early 40s had been rushed in, unconscious, unidentified, and without insurance documentation. His clothes suggested he was homeless. His pulse was weak. The hospital administrator on call, Richard Lawson, quietly reminded staff about resource allocation policies. The unspoken rule was clear: stabilize, but don't exhaust expensive interventions without financial clearance. But Olivia didn't see a policy. She saw a human being fading in front of her. She had overridden the waiting protocol and pushed for immediate advanced intervention. She called for a specialist consult without authorization and insisted on full trauma procedures. It had cost the hospital tens of thousands of dollars in emergency resources. But it saved the man's life. By noon, she was called into administration. The word still echoed in her mind as she walked home under a gray Midwestern sky. Failure to follow directive. Unauthorized medical escalation. Termination effective immediately. She didn't cry at first. The shock insulated her. But halfway down Maple Street, the reality settled like a weight on her chest. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Caleb's tuition installment was pending. Her health insurance would expire at the end of the month. Neighbors watched from porches as she passed, carrying the box of her belongings. She kept her eyes down, embarrassed, replaying the scene in her head. Had she overstepped? Had she been reckless? Or had she simply done what every nurse silently promises to do the day they take their oath: protect life at all costs? She reached the open field near her neighborhood when the air changed. At first, it was a distant thudding sound. Low, rhythmic, growing louder. She looked up, confused, as birds scattered from the trees. 2 military helicopters appeared over the horizon, slicing through the overcast sky. People began stepping outside their homes, pointing upward. The helicopters circled once. Then twice. And then, impossibly, they began descending toward the empty soccer field just 50 yards from where Olivia stood frozen. Dust and grass whipped around her as the first helicopter landed, followed seconds later by the second. The noise was deafening. Children screamed. Car alarms went off. Olivia's heart pounded so violently she thought she might collapse. The side doors slid open. Uniformed personnel jumped down first, scanning the area. Then a tall man in a dark navy dress uniform stepped onto the grass. His posture was rigid, his expression urgent. He moved quickly toward the small crowd forming near the field. His voice carried even over the fading rotor noise. "Where is the nurse? Where is Olivia Harper?" Time seemed to fracture. Olivia felt every eye turn toward her. Her legs felt weak as she stepped forward, clutching the cardboard box like a shield. "I'm Olivia," she managed softly, unsure whether she was about to be arrested or reprimanded for something she didn't understand. The Navy officer's expression shifted instantly. Relief flooded his face. "You saved Chief Marcus Reynolds this morning," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't know who he was. You didn't know that he's a decorated special operations medic. You just saw a life that needed saving." The name hit her like a whisper of recognition. The unidentified patient. The man they'd found unconscious near the rail yard. "He collapsed during classified training," the officer continued. "We were transporting him when he lost vital signs. By the time we reached St. Matthew's, we were preparing for the worst. Your decision gave him a second chance." Olivia's breath caught. "He regained consciousness 2 hours ago at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base Medical Center," the officer said. His first words were asking for the nurse who wouldn't give up on him. The crowd had gone completely silent. The officer stepped closer and held out a small velvet box. Inside was a Navy Civilian Commendation Medal. "On behalf of the United States Navy," he said, his voice steady but filled with gratitude, "we thank you for your courage and your refusal to let policy outweigh humanity." Olivia felt tears spill down her face now, not from humiliation, but from overwhelming disbelief. The officer then handed her an official envelope. "Chief Reynolds personally requested that you be offered a position with our Federal Medical Support Unit. Full benefits. Full protection. And full authority to make the kind of decisions you made today, without fear." The field erupted into applause. Neighbors who had watched her walk home in shame just minutes earlier now wiped their eyes. Someone shouted, "We're proud of you, Olivia." Her hands shook as she opened the envelope. It wasn't just a job offer. It was validation. It was dignity restored. In that moment, the weight she had carried down Maple Street lifted. She hadn't lost her career. She had found her calling. That evening, news stations across Ohio reported the story of the nurse who chose compassion over compliance. St. Matthew's Regional Hospital released a brief statement about reviewing internal policies. The tone had shifted. Within days, community members organized a support rally outside Olivia's duplex. Flowers covered her porch. Letters poured in from strangers across the country. But what mattered most was a quiet phone call 2 days later. Chief Marcus Reynolds, still recovering but stable, spoke with her personally. He told her that during his years of service overseas, he had learned to recognize courage instantly. He said that in the emergency room, even unconscious, he felt someone fighting for him. Olivia listened, tears silently streaming down her cheeks, as he thanked her not as a soldier, but as a father of 2 daughters who still needed him. That night, she sat on her small front steps, watching the sunset paint the Ohio sky in soft pinks and golds. Caleb sat beside her, squeezing her hand. "You did the right thing," he said. She smiled through quiet tears. "I just did my job." But it had been more than a job. It had been a choice. And sometimes, the world tests those choices in ways we never expect. Before we close this story, take a moment right now to comment the word courage if you believe standing up for what's right still matters. Your support helps more stories like this reach people who need hope. Olivia reported to her new position 3 weeks later. The helicopters didn't return, but their echo stayed with her, a reminder that integrity may cost you in the moment, but it can open doors you never imagined. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or reminded you of the power of compassion, please like, share, and comment below. Your engagement keeps these stories alive and spreads hope further than we'll ever know. Because sometimes, you think you're walking home defeated. Until the sky opens, and the world comes looking for the nurse who refused to give up.